Avengers Secret Wars, the end of Phase 6, the end of the multiverse saga, the end of the MCU as we know it. At this point, it seems extremely likely that the MCU will be soft rebooted with Secret Wars, recasting many characters from the start of the MCU until now, introducing us to the MCU X-Men, and casting characters that haven't been seen since pre-MCU or haven't been seen yet in live action. So, today, I want to take a look at all the Avengers characters in the MCU, along with a few of their closely related characters, and see who is most likely to be recast with the reboot. But if you're watching this before July 27th, go in the description or click the card on screen right now to set your reminder for my live stream where I will be covering all the news, reveals, and trailers to come out of the Marvel Studios Hall H panel at San Diego Comic-Con. You won't want to miss it. There are 23 characters we will be ranking today in these 4 categories. Almost zero chance to get recast, unlikely to be recast, could go either way, and I'd be surprised if they weren't recast. When ranking these characters, I only had the first 10 years of the reboot in mind. Of course, all these characters are eventually going to be recast, but for the sake of this video, it's about if they're going to be recast soon after or immediately after the reboot. So, for our first category, we have one character, and I'm sure it's an obvious one, so to get it out of the way, Spider-Man. He's getting a second trilogy where 1 or 2 of the movies are going to release after Secret Wars, and even after his next trilogy is over, I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up here and there in Miles movies and team-up events. It's time we see a live-action Peter Parker well into his adulthood, and I think that's what we're gonna get. Tom Holland's only 28, and he's got a lot of years as Spider-Man left. So who's unlikely to be recast? We have 2 characters here. The first is Peggy Carter, and the second is Pepper Potts, both for the same reason. I'm just not sure how much they'll go into Tony and Steve's romantic lives post-Secret Wars. We've seen it already, and we got great conclusions to those stories, and post-Secret Wars, the focus is mostly going to be on the X-Men, Fantastic Four, and other characters who haven't gotten the spotlight yet. While it's not impossible that they're recast and used again this soon, I don't think it's likely. Now, we get into the meat of the list. First, and could go either way, is Scott Lang Ant-Man. While I like the Ant-Man movies and Paul Rudd as a character, he's not usually at the top of people's lists, so I could see them not using him for a while. But for that same reason, you could argue it'd be easier to do a recast. Regardless, I don't see him being in the spotlight all that much, and personally, I think they're gonna have Hank be the main Ant-Man. Next is Bucky Barnes. Bucky in the MCU has a very passionate fan base, and while he's a really great character, he works best when he's with Cap, and like with Peggy before, I don't see them diving into the extended characters of Steve Rogers all that much in the beginning, so I'm not sure how prevalent the Winter Soldier would even be. Next is Sam Wilson, but for a different reason. It's very possible they keep Mackie around. I think it's very possible, maybe even slightly likely, that they have 2 Captain Americas around post-reboot, and with Mackie just now getting the chance to play Captain America, I think there's a decent chance they stick with him. But on the flip side, even if they do want to keep Sam Wilson as Captain America, Anthony Mackie might not want to stick around for another 10 years, so a recast could still be possible. Someone who will definitely be recast if they decide to use him is Hawkeye. Jeremy Renner has really made Hawkeye his own, and with this show, I'd honestly be satisfied if he doesn't show up in these next Avengers movies, although he totally will, and I definitely want him to. The reason why he's in this category is, once again, I'm not sure if they'll use Hawkeye this soon. There are so many honestly cooler and more interesting characters than Hawkeye, and I say that as a Hawkeye fan. So it comes down to, if they want to use him, they'll recast. If they don't, they won't. Down to our last 3 in this category. Next is Doctor Strange. They are 100% going to continue to use Doctor Strange right away. He is just such an important character to Marvel lore. No way they wait to use him. Benedict Cumberbatch is only 47. I can totally see him sticking around for another 10-ish years as a character. I mean, he's just so perfect. But at the same time, similar to Anthony Mackie, I could also see a scenario where he doesn't want to commit to another 10 years as the character, so Marvel would have no choice but to recast. Second to last in this category is Maria Hill, purely because I don't see any real reason to use her character. I'm sure they could fit her in, but how much is S.H.I.E.L.D. going to be focused on at the start? If they do use the character, I have no doubt it will be recast, but whether or not they do use the character is what I doubt. And the last character in this category is Nick Fury. Look, if they asked Samuel L. Jackson to come back, he'll say yes. He'll always say yes to playing Nick Fury. But he's 75. I'd have zero complaints with him returning, but I can see where Marvel would want to cast someone younger. However, Nick Fury is so synonymous with Samuel L. Jackson, and you could go some time without using character, so I can see them waiting a bit before recasting. On to our final category, and yes, you can see who's left, but I'll explain why for each. First up, T'Challa and Shuri. While I understand not recasting T'Challa for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, seeing as this is going to be a rebooted universe, there's no reason not to recast. T'Challa is such an important figure not only in comics, but in pop culture. It's time. And Shuri along with them, because if you're gonna recast T'Challa in a rebooted universe, it makes sense to recast his sister too. Next is Black Widow. Along with the rest of the characters on this list, I have zero doubts that Scarlett Johansson is going to appear in Secret Wars, but obviously she's not going to be Black Widow in the post-reboot MCU, and seeing how she has a strong fan base, I'm assuming they're going to use that character again. And along those same lines is Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk. He's been in the MCU since 2012. While he seems to really enjoy playing the Hulk, I think it's time to start fresh with the character. And while I'm personally not a Hulk fan, so many people are, and they should get a proper comic accurate Hulk. There's no way they don't use him right away, especially with Wolverine coming in. I can see them introducing Logan in some sort of Wolverine versus Hulk fight. Captain Marvel is only in this category due to the reception to her movies and to the character. While I don't dislike her movies, she is one of my lower ranked characters in the MCU. Now, I'm not going to hate on Brie Larson because that's just stupid. I know this character has a lot of fans, and she's another character I'm very confident they'll use within the first 10 years of the reboot. It just doesn't seem like Brie Larson would want to put herself through that much scrutiny for another 10 years. Hope Van Dyne, aka the Wasp, is an easy candidate for a recast, especially after Evangeline Lilly came out a few weeks ago saying she's retiring from acting. But even if she wasn't, the Wasp has hardly been utilized in the movies thus far, and I can see them rectifying that with this reboot. The twins, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. I think Quicksilver is obvious. They're going to use him, but you're not going to use Aaron Taylor Johnson. Scarlet Witch, while Elizabeth Olsen is fantastic, and she's one of my personal favorite MCU characters, I think they're going to want someone around the same age as the X-Men and someone who's going to stick around for 10 to 20 years. Wanda is such an important character in the X-Men stories, not to mention them hopefully probably making the twins Magneto's children in the reboot. It just makes sense to recast. Vision is the character that just barely made it into this category. I could see a world where they don't really use him in the beginning, but I chose to add him here because he is mainstream now, and if they're going to use Wanda, there's a solid chance to use him. If Wanda's gonna be younger, it makes sense to cast younger with Vision too. And Paul Bettany is 53. I don't see him wanting to go through all that makeup into his 60s. Thor honestly also just barely made it into this list purely because Chris Hemsworth seems to love playing this character so much, and he's gonna be in superhero shape for decades. However, I put him here because it just feels right to recast Thor. I mean, if you're gonna recast all OG Avengers, why would you save Thor? He's had a wonderful run in the MCU since Ragnarok, and with Thor 5 and Secret Wars, we will still have some final few Chris Hemsworth Thor stories to be told. Finally here, we're down to the last three. War Machine is a no-brainer. The character really hasn't done much in the MCU other than Secret Invasion where he was a Skrull, and Don Cheadle's 59. There's no reason for him to want to stick around, especially since I am super confident in Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, being recast. Look, before you go type that I'm wrong and stupid and he can never be recast, just hear me out. I'm with ya. Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man is easily in the Mount Rushmore of comic book castings. Easily. And that's coming from a guy who's not an Iron Man fan. Do you really think they're not going to take advantage of having all Marvel characters together? Do you really think they're not going to have Tony Stark interact with Reed Richards? No. It makes no sense to hold off on recasting such an important Marvel character. Iconic characters are recast. That's how superhero movies work. Every Spider-Man has been amazing. Every Superman has been amazing. Most Batman have been amazing. It's just the gig. Here's the important thing. Try your hardest not to compare the new actor to RDJ. I know it's going to be hard and we're all going to do it at first, myself included, but allow this new performance and take on the character to be just that, a new take. It doesn't have to be better than RDJ to be good. It just has to be good, which is what I'm going to be telling myself with our final character, Steve Rogers. My personal favorite MCU character. I have watched those movies so many times, I can quote them all. It's near impossible for me to imagine someone other than Chris Evans in the role, but same with Iron Man, it makes zero sense not to recast. You can finally have the Captain America and Cyclops rivalry. You can have the Avengers versus X-Men. Don't not recast because the character is iconic. These characters have been around long before Chris Evans and RDJ, and they'll be around long after. We're 1000% seeing both of them in Secret Wars as one final hurrah, and that's good enough for me.